All right, what's up, Arizona StuMo? Hey, if I haven't met you guys before, my name's Jake Welchans. I'm the Arizona StuMo campus director, and I just want to welcome you to StuMo Late Night. We do this every week throughout the semester, so if you're new here, here's what to expect from StuMo Late Night. Basically, we do a talk that's about 25 to 30 minutes long on leadership and faith. We have some Chick-fil-A, you meet some awesome people when we get out of here. So welcome tonight. If it's your first night, sit back, relax, enjoy the talk. It's going to be a fun series. If you guys weren't in here for the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've been going through this awesome series called The Essentials. And so what we did with this series is we came up with the 4 or 5 skills that if you could implement these 4 or 5 skills, man, it would take your faith to the next level in college. Like, these were the 4 most important skills we could imagine. And so once we finished that series, like, man, that was a great series. We thought it went awesome. And we're thinking, man, what could we do next to bring the most benefit to you guys, to help you guys grow the most in your leadership and your faith? And so we came up with this idea of the series Tough. You know, like Dane's saying, you know, you get that text, just tough, period. You know, tough things in life. We're going to talk about things that are really hard to deal with when we're talking about faith. We're going to talk about those topics that everybody wants to talk about, but no one's really mentioning. And our hope with going through this series is that we can teach you guys, man, that it's worth it to deal with these issues so that you guys can get a huge payout later in life. And so a lot of things we're going to be talking about tonight deal with sacrifice. The things we're going to be talking about in the series, you might have to sacrifice something, man, to deal with these issues that all of you are dealing with at the University of Arizona. And so sacrifice is a big part of what we're talking about. Last weekend, I actually did the opposite of sacrificing. I got a phone call about a week and a half ago, and I got invited to this event in Laguna Beach. And so I've never been to Laguna Beach before, right? I've been meeting you Newport, Huntington Beach people for years, and like, you know, just talking about how it's like, in fact, who's from Huntington? Any Huntington people in here? Wow, no Huntington. Newport? We got any Newporters? Okay, so we're talking Orange County, okay? Laguna Beach. I've been hearing from all these people over the years, man, how amazing Orange County is, how awesome it is. And so I don't really know what to expect from this event. They're like, hey, we'll get you out there. We'll pay for the event for you. You'll stay at this hotel. I'm like, okay, sounds cool. So I fly out for a day. And so I get to Santa Ana, which is Orange County Airport. I'm driving through Newport Beach. And as I drive through Newport Beach, I'm going, man, this is kind of nice. Like, I don't know if I've been in a place this nice before. We drive through, we hit the ocean. I'm like, this is incredible. We get to Laguna Beach, and I'm looking around. I'm like, man, this is one of the nicest places I've ever been. I'm like, what is this hotel I'm going to gonna be like? And so we pull in. I'm in a Honda CR-V Uber. We pull into the lobby or whatever, the reception area for this hotel. And I'm talking, we got Maserati, Porsche, Benz, Maserati. Like, it's crazy. And instantly, I know this hotel is nice enough that I'm starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable. But in these situations, you're faced with a choice. You can act like you've never been there before, or you can act like you do this all the time. And so I went with the latter. I was like, man, I'm gonna roll into this. I'm gonna fake it till I make it. And we're just gonna act like we played this out before. So we get there, the guys there open the trunk, they take my bags. That makes me a little bit nervous. I'm like, what are you doing with my bags? And they're like, sir, we're just taking them to your room. I'm like, okay. Act like you've been here before. Sounds great, sir. Take those to my room. I walk up to the front desk, and I'm showing up to the front desk. Usually at a hotel, you go up to the front desk, you tell them who you are, you wait for a while they get you your key. They don't make eye contact with you. I walk up to the front desk, and they're like, hello, Mr. Welchans. I'm like, how do you know who I am? I'm shocked. So, you know, we're having small talk, and they get me my key to my room. They're like, how many keys do you want? Just one. Just one's fine. He's like, can I escort you around and show you around the property? I'm like, absolutely. I'm used to these kind of things, so let's go. We start walking. He takes me to the vista that they have in their hotel, and this is what I see right here. Pretty incredible sight. Man, we're looking right at the Pacific Ocean. I'm talking like pool. The guy points out the pool. He goes, oh, sir, you'll love our pool. It's heated to 82 degrees exactly, just like most people like it. He's like, what do you think of the view? I'm like, it's pretty solid, like pretty good. He takes me to my room, and, you know, like at this point, I feel like we're friends. Like, I feel like we've known each other for a long time. He's like, is this your first time at the Montage? And I'm like, well, obviously I've done stuff like this before, but yeah, it's my first time at this hotel specifically, you know. And so he takes me to my room, incredible room, and I'm in like the water closet of the hotel, right? He walks out of the room. Guy walks in with my bags. He goes up to me. He's like, hey, man, where can I put your bags, sir? And I'm like, I would prefer to have my bags in my room. That would be nice. He's like, okay, just sets the bags down. He leaves. Like 2 minutes later, a lady walks up. She has truffles, and she's like, sir, do you need anything else? Here's some warm truffles for you. I'm like, okay, I'll take those. And the whole thing is overwhelming. I'm like, I look at this whole situation, and I think, I've never been in a situation like this before. I've never been in somewhere that's nice. And a lot of people would look at that situation, they would go, man, that's the life. Like walking up to Laguna Beach, staying in a hotel like that, that is the life. And it was pretty incredible. Do you guys ever wonder if you're getting the most out of your life? Do you guys ever think about, man, how am I doing in terms of getting the most out of life? As I've met with college students over the years here at Arizona, it's really interesting when you ask that question to people, man, what would it look like to get the most out of your life? I think everyone kind of has a different answer for that. The first year I was here, I met a lady, and her first assumption about getting the most out of life was that she would see every country in the world. To her, that was getting the most out of life. Some of you guys in here, I'm sure, girls are in Wall Street scholars, and you're thinking, man, the life for me would be going to Wall Street, man, grinding it out, working 80 to 90 hours a week, living the Wall Street lifestyle, having a great experience. Man, for a lot of people, that's the life. At Arizona, a lot of people think, man, the life is getting the most pleasure out of these 4 years here at Arizona. Whatever it is for you, whether it's alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it is for you, man, trying to get the most pleasure out of these 4 years at Arizona. If that's you, I understand that line of thinking, man, trying to get the most out of life. Sometimes at Arizona, it's image. Man, getting the right image and having that perfect image that you can display to other people. And that is the life, if you can nail that image. Did you know God wants you to get the most out of your life? He wants every single person in this room to maximize their life and to get the most out of it they possibly can. Did you know that God wants that for you? Here's the truth. God has a purpose for your life. And God's purpose for your life is the only way we can get the most out of our life. How do we know if we're on the right track to getting the most out of our life? Like, how can we evaluate that idea and figure out, man, are we actually getting the most out of life? Or are we going to get to the end of our life and go, I missed it? Is there some kind of measurement? Is there some kind of like litmus test that we can take and know we are on the right track to getting the most out of our lives, which I hope every single person in this room wants? I think there is. And I think the Bible is really clear on this idea of getting the most out of life and what that looks like. There's a verse I love that explains how we can know if we're getting the most out of life. And this is what it says. It's Romans 6:13. It says this: give yourselves completely to God, every part of you. You want to be tools in the hands of God to be used for his good purposes. You know you're on the right track to getting the most out of your life when you've given your life completely to God. How does someone give themselves completely to God? It takes sacrifice. It takes doing hard things. Sometimes things that are tough. Sometimes things that are difficult, things that we don't want to do. But in order to give ourselves to God completely and get the most out of life, it's going to take a little bit of sacrifice. If you've ever had that thought, just playing in the back of your head, saying, man, I'm thinking that I could get the most out of my life if I was just willing to give up this one thing for God. If I was willing to give up this area of my life that I know is keeping me back from living that life that's completely given for God. If you've thought to yourself, maybe I could get to that next level of my faith and my experience with God, you're probably right. God wants to use every single part of you, but he can only do that if he has you completely. I like to think of it this way. I'm not really a handy guy. You can look at me, probably figure that out. I'm not like a blue-collar type dude. There's guys in this room that can fix anything. I'm thinking about a lot of you guys in this room who can fix cars, houses, stuff like that. I've used like 3 tools in my life. Like a hammer and like maybe just a hammer. Like that's all I got, right? And so I can't even think of other names of tools as I'm up here. But I know this about a hammer. It's like if you asked me for a hammer and I went to my toolbox and I pulled out a stick and I handed it to you, you'd go, this isn't right. I can't really use this, right? And that's the same thing in our relationship with God, man. If we want to be used by God, he's got to have every single part of us, not just half, not just a quarter, but all of our lives. Here's the truth about this idea, though. To think about the idea of going all in with God and giving yourself to God and following him completely, that can seem so risky. I mean, if you're like me, which I have doubts on these things all the time, I tend to ask the question, what if I go all in for God and I get to the end of my life and it's all a lie? Like it wasn't true. Or what if I miss out on the fun things now in life because I'm trying to give myself completely to God and then I find out that it wasn't really worth it? Or what if I give up something hard or sacrifice for God and people start to think, man, I'm judging them because of the lifestyle choices I'm making? Or what if it's just hard? What if it's difficult to give yourself completely to God and to sacrifice for him? Here's the truth I know. If you are going to get the most out of your life, you have to give yourself completely to God. And it takes sacrifice. I'm not someone who does this perfectly. In fact, as I'm up here before you guys today, I can confidently say that I mess up all the time in terms of trying to pursue God and give him my life and go all in with him. And so I hope as we go through this series, Tough, we together can go on a journey where we learn how to deal with the difficult topics of faith. The things that everyone wants to talk about, but no one really wants to land on. I'm hoping we as a group can land on these things and learn how to deal with them together and come off way better on the other side. Experience a huge payout because I think that's what we're in for. I think it's going to be amazing. To be honest, here's what people are tempted to do when we're talking about tough topics in college, things that are hard to give up. Oftentimes what people are tempted to do, and myself included, is to go, hey, I'm going to hear what you have to say, but honestly, there's no chance I'm going to apply these things. Here's what I want to challenge you guys to do. As we begin this series, which tonight, we're not talking about anything specific. We're going to get to the specifics over the next 4 or 5 weeks. But tonight, as we talk, man, what I would challenge you guys to do is to open your mind and seriously consider these ideas and think through, man, is this something I'm willing to wrestle with? Because I think if you are, you're going to experience a huge payout later in life. It's going to be incredible. Here's the question we have to answer tonight. And it's one that we have to answer before we start dealing with these tough topics we're going to handle here over these next 4 to 5 weeks. It's going to be a ton of fun. But the question we have to answer tonight is, why should I sacrifice to follow God in college? Why should I do that? If we don't have a good answer for that, and we start going into these tougher topics, there's no way we're going to apply these things. This is the question we're going to answer tonight. Why should I sacrifice anything for God in college? And we got 3 points that I think you guys will love as we go through this. Here's the first reason why I think we should sacrifice for God in college. And this is, I truly believe this to be true. I think the first reason we should sacrifice for God in college is this is what we were made to do. This is what you were made to do. Actually made to do. Sometimes I like to run through hypotheticals in my life, and one of the questions I always run through, which I don't know if this is a healthy thing or not, but sometimes I think through, man, is there a hidden talent in my life that, man, if I would have discovered this talent at like 5 or 6, man, I would be world class in this thing? Like, is there like a talent like that? Is anyone with me in that? Like, you think about, what is that thing that I missed? Is it singing? I know that's not true for me. Is it, something that I missed? What is that thing? And so about 3 years ago, I started swimming for the first time. You move to Tucson, it's hot. And so I was like, okay, this will be a great workout regimen, just start swimming. Wasn't good at it at first, but started, like watching some YouTube videos and stuff like that. And, I started feeling pretty good. I was like, oh, man, I'm not a bad swimmer. And so I'm like swimming, I'm Strava in it, like everyone else, which you guys can follow me if you want to. It's not that impressive. But I'm swimming, and I'm starting to ask that question. I'm like, man, maybe I missed my calling. And like, I'm like, like I'm having like serious conversations with my wife. I'm like, I don't know, like I'm thinking about Michael Phelps, like proportions and like his body. And I'm just looking at myself thinking, I don't know, maybe we're similar. Like maybe we have things in common. And she's looking at me like, you're crazy, And I was like, well, the thing Michael Phelps does, like he's like intimidating like his opponents and, does this thing. And she's like, Jake, don't worry, you're not even close to that. But I start asking the question, I'm like, man, is this what I was made to do? Was I born to be a swimmer? Maybe I was. There's a problem with that. We started playing basketball. My son started playing basketball this year. He's 7 years old. And you meet people when your kids are playing sports. One of the people I met on my kid's sports team is a guy named Matt. And so here's a picture of Matt right here. You guys probably think we look similar, as you take in that picture. But it's clear there's a difference, right? Those are Olympic medals that Matt has. And so Matt walks up to practice the first day of basketball, drops off his girl, stands next to me. I'm instantly intimidated. He's 6'8". He's like 10 times as strong as me. He's won a gold medal in swimming in the Olympics. And I start to realize this truth. Matt was made to swim. I am not. That is not my calling. What were we made to do? Like, what were you made to do? Is there something that every single person in this room was made to do? The answer to that question is yes. You specifically, not generally, like every single person in this room was made to sacrifice for God and for others. Man, to give their life for something bigger. There's a verse I love in the Bible. It's Ephesians 2:10, and it says this: "It is God himself who has made us what we are and given us new lives from Christ Jesus. And long ages ago, he planned that we should spend these lives in helping others." It's an incredible piece of the Bible. What this verse is saying is that, man, before your parents had you, before you were even a thought, before the world was even made, God knew you. And he had a plan for you. And his plan revolved around you living a life of purpose, spending your life sacrificing for the benefit of others, man, living for God. That's what you were made to do. There's another verse I love, Matthew 10:39. It says this: "Those who try to hold on to their lives will give up true life, but those who give up their lives for me will hold on to true life." And it's this idea that you guys were made for a specific purpose, to sacrifice, man, to live for a bigger purpose, to live for other people. But so many times in our lives, we grab for something else and we will not let go, even if a great life over here is calling. There's this really cliche illustration. You guys might have heard it before, but if you're ever trying to hunt a monkey, okay, like actually go and hunt a monkey, there's a surefire way to catch a monkey. And like you can look this up on YouTube. This is true. This is National Geographic. We won't go into detail here. But basically, if you want to catch a monkey, you get a vase, a heavy vase, and you put a peanut at the bottom of this vase, and you wait for a monkey to come by and find the peanut. What happens is the monkey sticks its hand in the vase, makes a fist, and cannot pull its hand out of the vase. And it will sit there holding the peanut until someone just comes and grabs it, right? It won't let go. Sometimes I wonder if that's our lives. Like we're being called to this incredible thing that God has for us that is unique, that you were designed to do, and we won't let go. I've been there so many times, and I want to challenge us to rethink how we're living our lives. The first reason we should sacrifice is because it's what we were made to do. The second reason we should sacrifice, the second reason we should give our lives completely to God is this: because God will reward you. It's an incredible fact, man, that God wants to reward you for living a life of sacrifice for him. I remember going to Kaleo after my freshman year, and I had this leader. So basically at Kaleo, we talked about it a lot. You guys have heard about it, but you live with a leader, and the leader's job is to lead you that summer, help you become a better man or a woman, invest in you, give their life to you. I was lucky enough to have an incredible leader. His name was Matt. And Matt was just a man's man. And he was always challenging us, man, always having hard conversations, helping us grow. He was completely committed to the summer. It was an incredible summer for me. So Matt had the posh job at Kaleo. And basically his job, no lie, like the title was beach guy. Like he was beach guy. And beach guy looked like this. Basically, you would roll up to the beach, and your job was to set up chairs at the beach for people to come sit in them. And then at the end of the day, you put the chairs up. That's what you did. And these guys would walk away with $300 to $400 in tips a day, like making bank. They would set up people's chairs. Here's a 20, here's a 50, whatever. People just throwing money at them, and this was their job. So it's a posh job. It doesn't require much sacrifice. And one day, Matt was out there at his little hut that they had. It's hot outside, and he looks out at the buoy, probably like 100 yards away from the beach, and he sees a guy at the buoy. He's like, that's weird. He's way out there. I don't know if that's good, but he just kind of keeps going on his day. But 10 to 15 minutes later, he sees the guy at the buoy waving at the ocean or at the beach, trying to get someone's attention. He's like, man, I think that guy's in trouble. And so he looks at the guy and he's like, well, in order to go get that guy, man, I got to go through these waves. I got to fight through the ocean to go get this guy. That's a huge sacrifice. I'm beach guy. I don't do that. Well, Matt gets the courage because he's a man, and he swims out to the buoy, and it turns out, man, this guy is about to drown. Like literally like seconds away from dying. He grabs the guy, gets him back to the beach, and the guy is like on the beach. He's not able to like speak, and he gets up and like totally disheveled, walks off, and Matt's like, wow, I saved this guy's life. Forgets about it, comes home. He tells us that day like it was a crazy, he swam out there, but goes back to work the next day, not even thinking about it. He's sitting there at his hut. This guy comes up, same guy, but completely different looking. Really polished, put together guy, and he has a watch in his hand. He slaps it on the table and goes, it's yours. This is not like a $50 watch. This is a $2,000 Swiss watch that the guy puts on the table and goes, it's yours. Matt's like, I can't take that. Man, that's crazy. He goes, man, you saved my life. This is the least I can do. You see, Matt sacrificed, and the payout was huge. Way more than he could have imagined. Like a Swiss watch. That's the truth with us in our lives with God. So many times we can be tempted to think to ourselves, man, if we sacrifice or give up something for God, man, God's going to forget that thing. It probably won't be worth it. But here's what the Bible has to say about that. It's incredible. Hebrews 6:10, or not Hebrews 6:10. Hebrews 6:10 says this: God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you've helped his people and continue to help him. Here's what I love about God. He doesn't forget. Everything you do for him, big or small, everything you do for others, big or small, he's got a list, and he never forgets. And he's not just sitting there remembering these things you're doing. This is what Jesus had to say about those things we give up. This is what he says: let me assure you that no one has ever given up anything, home, brothers, sister, mother, father, children, or property for love of me and to tell others the good news, who won't be given back 100 times over and shall have eternal life. So it's not only that God doesn't forget, man, God is going to pay us back huge, 100 times over, for every little thing we sacrifice for him. It may not be tomorrow. It may not be like next year. It may not be in this life, but in eternity, man, you will receive 100 times anything you've given up for him. He never forgets. There's this guy named Blaise Pascal, and Blaise Pascal is an amazing mathematician. So he lived, I think it was the 1600s, and he's credited for basically helping invent calculus. That's how smart this guy was. And so he was a brilliant guy, and his whole life, he lived checking the boxes in his faith, right? And so he checked the boxes of his faith, but he never pushed past to go sacrifice. He never pushed back to do something hard for God. Here's the crazy thing. His sister started learning who God really was. And they were really close. And he started to see his sister start sacrificing for God, living completely for him, man, doing hard things for him, and he was confused. He's like, why in the world would she do this? But as he started to watch her life, he started to see that there was a very clear difference from the life she was living and the life he was. She was experiencing true life. Later on, he would live a life completely devoted to God. And he came up with this really cool concept. It's called Pascal's wager. And it's this really interesting idea, and it kind of dovetails to what we're talking about tonight. And you got to walk through this grid that he came up with right here. And basically, this is what it looked like. He came up with these quadrants, and it said, does God exist or does God not exist? And basically, do you sacrifice for him or do you not sacrifice for him? Do you not live for him? And he started walking through the logical consequences of what happens when someone lives in one of these quadrants. And it blows my mind to think about what he came up with here, because it's so true. And think about this. Let's say God does not exist and you don't sacrifice for him. Man, you get a short-term gain that's not very big, and then life's over, right? Let's say God does not exist and you sacrifice for him. Well, I think actually what you would experience in your life is a pretty good life. A life lived for other people. A life where you get the most out of life. And you pass on, God doesn't exist, but you still lived a good life. But let's pretend God does actually exist, which he does. And you lived a life where you didn't sacrifice for him. Man, you'd lose big. We all would. But let's pretend that God does exist, and man, we live a life of sacrifice for him, where we live completely for him. Man, the payout is huge. Man, logically speaking, it makes sense to live for God. It does. Here's the third reason why we should sacrifice in our pursuit of God and following him. And this reason is summed up this way. It's because God sacrificed for us. He sacrificed for us. I'm sure some of you guys read our Essential series and you heard me talk about prayer, where I talked about I was in AP Art History, and it's not impressive. Like, I was in AP Physics, and I dropped out of that because I needed to take an easier class. AP Art History fit that bill. Well, what I didn't tell you guys was when I first started taking AP Art History, I was crushing it. I mean, we would have tests, and these were not like the easiest tests in the world, but I was getting like 97, 98, 96, not really fitting into the lifestyle I was trying to live of just right achieving, which I talked about, but man, I was doing really well. Well, a couple months into the semester, which many of you guys have heard as well, I blew out my knee playing football. And like complete blowout, like backwards, like really bad injuries. So for the next 4 months, I was dealing with rehab, basically on my bed, on painkillers. And I remember going back to AP Art History a couple weeks after I had that knee injury and just failing the class. I mean, I went from getting 96, 97, 98 to getting Fs in the class. I could not study. I could not get a good grade. I was getting the worst grades of my life. And I remember thinking at the end of the semester, I'm going to get the report card and I'm going to have an F in the class for the first time. I'm going to fail. And I remember getting the report card and being nervous and opening it up and pulling it out. And I remember seeing the grade on the page and it not making sense. It said A. My teacher, Jean Peters, had sacrificed for me. She had put her reputation on the line even when I was failing the class 100%. And she gave me an A in the class that I didn't deserve. I didn't earn it. Man, I think about our life with God. And I think about the fact that he came to sacrifice for us. I mean, think about Jesus for a second. I mean, he is living the ultimate life in heaven, where he then decides to come down to earth and to sacrifice and live a tough life on this earth for us. And it wasn't just a hard, normal life. No, he was rejected by his people. He was beaten. He was killed. And the reason he was killed was so that we could have a right relationship with God, something we didn't deserve. We got the A. He got the F. He did that for us. He sacrificed for us so that we could live lives of sacrifice for others. In fact, Ephesians 5:2 says this, Live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. The reason we are able to sacrifice for other people, the number one reason is because God himself sacrificed for us. We're doing the Tough series. And over the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about tough things. Like the topics that we're all thinking about, the things we're all wondering about, we want to know how to handle in college. But man, the teachings on these things, they can be tough. And here's what I want to challenge you guys to do. I want to challenge you guys to have an open mind, knowing why we sacrifice for these things. It's what you were made to do. God did it for us, and the rewards are huge. I want to start off just with a little light discussion with the person next to you. Go ahead and discuss this question right here. What's something in your life now you think God might be calling you to sacrifice for him? Go ahead and spend about a minute and just discuss this. Could be small, could be big. Discuss with the people next to you. Man, this is where we start to grow in our faith, man, when we start having discussions about the hard things that are tough to deal with, but have this huge payoff in life. I told you guys about my experience last week, and it was incredible. Like, I've never experienced something like that. I probably never will again. In fact, I looked up the cost of my room, my like little water closet room that I was staying in last weekend at the hotel. And if you had to guess, I wonder what you would guess, but it was $1,300 a night to stay in that hotel. It costs a ton. Now, I didn't pay for it. Someone else paid that for me, but man, it cost a ton. But the experience was incredible. I look at it and I think, man, would I trade it for something else? No, I mean, it was awesome. It was a great experience. I got a ton out of it. I've also been on the flip side of that coin. I remember I went on the spring break trip with some StuMo people, and we were in LA, and we were looking for an Airbnb last minute, and we found this Airbnb, and it was run down, but it got the job done, okay? It cost us like nothing, but we show up at the house, and for some reason it's freezing in LA that day, but you go around the house, there's all these problems, like you couldn't shut off the AC, so literally like at night, like it was like snowing in the living room. It was so cold. There wasn't enough places to sit. It was dirty. There were creatures all over the place. And we went through that experience that night, and we didn't pay anything, and it was just okay. I think about our lives. I think about Philippians 2:17. It says this: "It is your faith that makes you offer your life as a living sacrifice to serving God." It's your faith that challenges you to sacrifice for God. And here's the truth about our faith. Any faith that costs nothing is worth nothing. Any faith that costs nothing is worth nothing. What does your faith cost you? Does it cost you anything? That's an honest question. I ask myself this question all the time, and often I come up short. What is it costing you? Here's what I want to tell you guys. History is full of examples of people who have chosen to sacrifice, to live for God, to give themselves to God completely and not hold anything back. And the opposite of that statement we just made is true as well. A faith that costs you everything is worth everything. Which one will you choose? I hope you'll choose the latter. I'm excited about these next 4 or 5 weeks. They're going to be fun. They're going to be tough. They're going to be challenging for me and for all of us as well. But I'm excited to go on that journey with you guys as well. I hope you guys will choose a faith that costs you everything, because, man, at the end of the day, it'll be worth everything. Thanks.